Niners lose, Niners lose, Niners lose, and they finish their year with 6 wins and 11 losses. This season mercifully comes to an end. It was not a vintage Niners season, and we got a lot to talk about, though. Let's go right here. It's the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Let's go. And we get it rolling on the Krug Show after the 49ers lose to the Arizona Cardinals. They got their doors blown off. 23-point loss. 47-24. The 49ers lose in Glendale to finish this year. 6 wins and 11 losses. Welcome to the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show. Brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, along the Monterey Peninsula. Call my friend Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. And we're also brought to you by Better, the live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get that first deposit matched up to $200. Everyone who does is automatically entered into a drawing to win a free signed Ricky Pearsall jersey. We'll announce the winner on Super Bowl Sunday. Well, this game, luckily the Niners didn't win because you didn't want to see them win and hurt their draft position. But it was ugly, 47-24. Josh Dobbs threw for 326 yards, 29 of 43, a couple touchdowns. But he also had 2 interceptions and a fumble, and the Niners lose to the Cardinals 47-24. What were your guys' thoughts first? Before we get into it, what was your first thought on this game?
It was definitely a football game. I don't have a lot of takeaways from this other than, they played bad, but that's a good thing, right? I guess. I think the most shocking thing, if you're looking at this, just like the team stats, is that the Niners had 13 penalties for 85 yards, and the Cardinals had 1. That is just absolutely ridiculous. 13 penalties. I had to double check my eyes when I looked at that. I'm like, because I knew there was a lot, but 13, that's crazy. And then also 3 turnovers to Arizona 0. That's why in a game where the total yardage is relatively the same, 436 for the Niners, 393 for the Cardinals. That's why the score is 47-24.
Frank, what'd you think?
Well, it's interesting. Once I knew the game didn't really matter, and ultimately you wanted the 49ers to lose, I put my coaching hat on, and I looked at the game from a perspective of evaluation. And I saw guys flying around. Collectively, they did not mail it in. One of the great coaches at the high school level in basketball is a guy by the name of Coach Mo at McClymonds High School. They actually went undefeated, won the state championship about a decade ago. But when I talked to him, he's one of my mentors. You compartmentalize the game. So when I looked at the game, I looked at it from quarter to quarter to quarter. The game got away from the 49ers. They were not horrible today. You look at the score, and they got blowed out. But if you compartmentalize the game, there were parts in which they were playing pretty good football. So what I was looking at was, can player X play next year? Winters, can he cover in the flat area? I got some concerns about that. I got some concerns about the cornerbacks, the offensive line. So overall, I saw a lot of good things, and I saw some things that need to improve. Kyle Shanahan made a comment about Ricky Pearsall earlier in the week. He says that he needs to improve his upper body strength. He does. I saw that. That one interception that Josh Dobbs had, that wasn't Josh Dobbs' fault. That was a combat catch that he did not get. So we got some time to talk about the entirety of the game, but there were some pluses and minuses and some things I liked and some things I did not like.
I mean, I just felt like the Niners defense in the second half fell apart. I mean, Arizona at halftime had 54 yards rushing, and they wound up with 151. So, second half of this game, they were rushing for about 7 yards a pop. They ran for 5, 6 a carry in this game. But in the second half, it was, they ran for 97 yards, and it had to be close to 7 yards a carry. So, I don't know what to say. The Niners in the first half ran the ball really well, 7 yards a carry. Niners in the second half didn't run the ball as well, got away from it. Dobbs was 18 of 26 for 191 in the first half. He finished up 29 of 43 for 326. Patrick Taylor had a pretty good game. I thought he ran the ball effectively. He ran the ball hard. He had 6-4 a carry. Guerendo went out early in this game after 2 carries with what looks to be maybe multiple injuries, a knee injury and an ankle possibly. But Dobbs played pretty well outside of the 3 turnovers, and Taylor ran the ball effectively, but the Niners could not stop the run in the second half. Tony Jones had a 46-yard touchdown run at the end, which makes it look worse. But, Tony Jones, Michael Carter, they did a nice job on Michael Carter, but DJ Dallas had a 22-yard run and Jones had a 46-yard run, and that kind of distorted things for the 49ers. It was a good game for Pearsall. He had 6 catches on 8 targets for 69 yards and a touchdown. We got to see more of Jacob Cowing. He got a couple catches for 30 yards. But overall, I didn't want to see the 49ers win, and they didn't. I think I wanted to see the 49er defense play a little bit better than it did. It just seemed like they had no sacks of Kyler, only 2 hits on Kyler all day. The Cardinals, by comparison, had 2 sacks and 4 hits on the quarterback. So, the Niners, once again, when you don't pressure the quarterback and you can't stop the run, you wind up losing the turnover margin. And when you wind up losing the turnover margin, it's hard to win any of these games. 13, if all I told you was the Niners had 13 penalties and Arizona had 1, and the Niners had 3 turnovers and the Arizona had 0, that's it right there. 13 penalties and -3 in turnovers will get you beat every single time. And that's what happened today.
And there was a graphic that was shown on the screen during the broadcast that was like, over the last X amount of games, it was like the Niners were -12 in turnovers, and the Cardinals were also like -6. And it's just like the fact that both these teams are struggling so bad in turnovers, but even still, the Niners lost this turnover battle by 3. It just shows that their problems right now, at least, kind of summing up a lot of their issues this year. But I'll give Ricky credit. We were talking about Ricky earlier. I'll give Ricky credit. He did have I agree with you, Frank. That was a really bad drop that led to the interception, but he showed really good hand strength on his 1 touchdown pass over the middle. And so I'll give him credit on that one. That was
he's coming along. I like what I see from the guy, but I thought Kyle Shanahan made a very astute point. Like Antoine Bolden. Antoine Bolden was a guy that if the ball was in his vicinity, he came down with it. And Antonio Brown, Mike Evans. That's what he needs to be. He's a first-round pick who has legit talent that showed that he wants to be successful, get in the weight room and come back next year and look like Jawan Jennings. So I'm excited about some of the things that I saw. But like you said, Larry, I think momentum means a lot. And Moody missing the field goals, that hurts the team emotionally when guys are not doing their jobs. And in the second half, it started to fall apart. That's more of what the 49ers have been this year in terms of coaching. They need to make some changes on their coaching staff. So I don't put all of that on the players. And I think that Arizona underachieved. Kyler Murray in a really good organization would be balling. That guy is talented as hell.
You're muted, Dad.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Murray is definitely a huge talent. It's funny. The Niners came out in this game, and Guerendo gets hurt right away. And they settle for the Jake Moody 51-yard field goal, and they're up 3-0. Okay. Then they get a stop on the first set of downs, and you're thinking, okay, maybe this is their game. Maybe this is their day. Next drive, their second possession. Pooney, false start. Then there's a Pooney, ineligible man downfield penalty. So that kind of set him back on the chains. So they wind up on 3rd and 15 from the 30, and Dobbs goes to Jennings, and it's incomplete. So now it's 4th and 15. They bring on Moody to kick another long field goal, this one from 47 yards out, and he misses. So to me, that was like, okay, here we go again. Now game's going all right, and then the Niners start to show themselves. Moody misses a field goal. Then Arizona gets the ball back on their own 27-yard line, and they move the ball down the field. The Niners, it gets to 3rd and 5 from the 43. Murray goes to Zay Jones, and Renardo Green makes a really nice pass breakup, and you're thinking, okay, they're getting off the field. But on 4th and 5, they know that the Niners have a disaster special teams unit, and they run a fake punt, and DJ Dallas runs for 23 yards down the middle of the defense for a first down, and the drive continues. And it's like right there, it's just in a nutshell, it's like boom, boom, boom. This is the Niners that we've seen all year. Jake Moody misses a field goal. Then they have a massive breakdown on special teams. And then Arizona winds up scoring a field goal of their own. Ryland connects from 51 yards out, and it's 3-3. But what happens 3 plays later? Dobbs throws an interception, and on 3rd and 8, and Arizona goes down and scores again. So it's like negative play on the field goal miss, negative play on the faked punt, negative play on the interception, and it's like, okay, what the heck? So then they get the interception, they go down, they score on the Murray to Dortch 21-yard touchdown pass, catch and run. So they're up 10-3. The 49ers get the ball. It's their 4th possession. They get the ball. They move the ball up to, cross, I guess from their 30 to just the 39-yard line. It's 4th and 1 from their own 39, and they're down 10-3, and they're already eliminated, and Kyle Shanahan's still punting? I mean, what? That seemed very, very, very conservative, did it not?
It did.
I realize, you're on your side of the field and you're giving them a short field, but the season is over. It's 4th and 1. I mean, to me, that just, you got to go for it there.
They just punked you on the fake punt.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Go for it.
Yes, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And then luckily the Niners on the next possession on 3rd and 1, Michael Carter gets stuffed by D. Winters and Jordan Elliott, and the Cardinals, because they were on their own 27-yard line, they opted to punt. So, not going for it on 4th and 1 didn't ultimately burn the 49ers. And then they, on the next drive, they drove down and they get the 8-play 74-yard drive, and Dobbs, or I guess 3rd and goal from the 1. Dobbs with the quarterback, I guess it was the quarterback sneak for the touchdown to make it 10-10. So it's 10-10, and there's like 30 seconds left or 50 seconds left, and they let Arizona go 8 plays and 70 yards. Or no, I guess that was later. That was the next. Yeah, that was so Arizona on the next drives down, and they go and they score a touchdown on the Murray to McBride, 1st and goal from the 3 against Fred Warner. So then the Niners on the next possession, their 6th possession, there's a minute 51 left. They drive the ball down the field. Dobbs hits Ricky Pearsall for a 6-yard touchdown to make it 17-17, 10-play drive. And you're thinking, okay, hey, we're in the locker room.
16 seconds left.
Yeah, we're in the locker room 17-17. All right. There's no time left at all. and they let the Cardinals go 4 plays, 39 yards, and Ryland kicks a 49-yard field goal. In 16 seconds, they gave up the lead. And I mean, just like, seriously, the situational defense is just horrible, just absolutely horrible. So is it the worst defense I've ever seen? No. But they fall apart in the red zone and in inopportune moments? Yes. Do they stop the run? No. It just, the special teams coordinator's got to go. The kicker's got to go. I think the defensive coordinator's got to go. Shanahan can return. Lynch can return. Purdy needs to return. But Sorensen's got to go. And Schneider's got to go. And Jake Moody's got to go. If those guys aren't gone, I seriously have to question the Niners' accountability as an organization. You can't bring those guys back. Jake Moody has the look of death. If he goes somewhere else and succeeds, so be it. He's a totally defeated man, and the fans will be totally defeated if they see him week 1. So he's got to go. Schneider's absolutely should have been gone 6 weeks ago, and he absolutely has to go. And I think Sorensen's got to go. I don't think you can go forward with Sorensen as, just a second-year defensive coordinator who doesn't show any. What has he done this year? I mean, they sat in their wide 9. They never blitzed. When they couldn't stop anybody, they still didn't blitz. They were a horrible situational defensive team all year long. I know there'll be people that will say, well, they're pretty good in yards per game. Okay, but you know what? To me, it's like you need to have what Philly has. Philly brought in Vic Fangio. He's an established defensive coordinator. If you go, I think you need to go shop for an established defensive coordinator. And if that guy says, you know what, we want to go 3-4, then I think you should go 3-4 and abandon the wide 9 and switch up your scheme, even if it means you've got to. And now is the perfect time to do it because you only really have a few defensive linemen that are worth a damn anyway. Right now, you're going to be looking to redo your front 7 anyway. So that's how I see it. I mean, I'm trying to be unbiased. I try to be fair-minded. To say that Shanahan needs to go, I think that's knee-jerk. You're still talking about a guy whose offense makes scores points. They can run with a number of different backs. I mean, to me, that's knee-jerk. To say Lynch needs to go, I can understand it because there's been a lot of failed draft choices. But, man, I think John's such a positive in what he brings to the organization. I don't think I would say he needs to go. I think you need to bring in somebody, another draft consultant, to give another voice in the room because you're not hitting at a high enough rate. So those guys are all returning. And obviously Purdy's returning. And if, I got to get a contract done, I'd rather have it be closer to $45 million than $65 million. That's for damn sure. But that's coming down the pike. But to me, it's all about get Brock signed, get a better defensive coordinator, hire a new special teams coordinator. People would say, well, Krug, you always are always saying, hey, don't get rid of your existing coach unless you have a better idea. You're right. I do say that. And I do have a better idea. So to me, the guy who I'm watching during this football season that is absolutely a difference-making coach is Notre Dame's special teams coach. Notre Dame is fantastic at special teams. They block kicks, they return kicks, their coverage units are on point, their players get better, they seem to be really smart, they play situational football. They got a guy named Marty Biaggi. Go contact Notre Dame, ask for permission to interview Marty Biaggi, and double his salary and bring him in as the special teams coordinator. There you go. Problem solved. Goodbye, Schneider. Hello, Biaggi. And now we've got one thing settled. Now you need to go find a defensive coordinator who, either if you're going to keep your wide 9 is willing to work with you, or at least has enough credibility to walk in on day 1 and convince the players that there's going to be a new sheriff in town and it's a new world order. Because, Frank, we talked about this many times in the past, but you can't always go with the coach that the players like. Yes, the players like Nick Sorensen. Nick Bosa likes Nick Sorensen. Fred Warner likes Nick Sorensen. I don't think you can go with Nick Sorensen just because the star players in the room like him. I just don't.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm trying to find a way to bring Nick Sorensen back, but maybe not as a defensive coordinator. I actually think the guy was set up. I mean, he didn't raise his hand and say, hey, I'm the defensive coordinator. So, you know, I talked about it 7-8 weeks ago. I mentioned the name Wink Martindale, you know, the defensive coordinator at Michigan. Guess what? He took a ramsack bunch of guys that got their asses kicked against Texas game 1, and by the end of the year, that defense was one of the top defenses in college football. And this guy's been a pro coach throughout his career. I don't want to talk to Wink Martindale. I don't know if his philosophy matches, but I want to talk to him. And go back to the Baltimore Ravens. Remember when they had Wink Martindale? Rex Ryan was the linebackers coach. So I don't think there's anything wrong with stocking your organization with quality coaches. If Sorensen is okay to learning how to become a better defensive coordinator, maybe down the road, I might try to bring the guy back because the players apparently do like him. I didn't even know that. But as the
coordinator or as a linebacker coach?
As one of the position coaches, but not the defensive coordinator. They need a change from that position. But I would think about bringing the guy back. I also like your idea about scanning the NFL and college and saying, where can I get the best upcoming special teams coach? Who's the best special teams coach in the NFL? That guy has a backup. Who is that guy?
Dave Taub, the Chiefs special teams coordinator, is widely considered to be the preeminent special teams coordinator in the game.
Who's his understudy? I want to talk to him.
Right.
I don't think the Niners are going to get rid of Sorensen. I have a feeling that they're going to keep him. And I'm not saying that's the right thing at all. But my take on this since last offseason has been, you got to get a guy who's done it. I don't want a guy who's like, oh, let's see if he is going to be a good defensive coordinator. Get a guy who's been a good defensive coordinator. Go get Jim Schwartz. We were talking about Belichick. Obviously, he's off the table. But it's like promoting a guy from within is a great story. But if it doesn't work out, he doesn't have any experience. Like, it's just like, I don't really understand the lateral move or even the step back, honestly, from Wilkes this season in Sorensen. I look at Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio's doing great over there with the Eagles. It's like, get a guy who knows how to do it. I like the Martindale take by Frank. I think he's a good coach. There's a lot of options out there, but I don't want a lateral move. I want an upgrade. That's what I want.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, to me, it's got to be somebody with pelts on the wall. It can't just be like, hey, he's a young guy. He's really sharp, and he's blankety blank's grandson. No, it's got to be somebody who has won a championship or won a conference championship. You need somebody big time. Eagles had major doubts on what they were doing going into last offseason. They bring in Fangio, they bring in Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, and boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, they get the number one defense in pro football. So, Danny just walked in, and Dan, what we started off by saying is, I'm saying I'm fine with Shanahan coming back. I'm fine with Lynch coming back, but I can't have Jake Moody back. He's got to go. I can't have Brian Schneider back. Sadly, he's got to go. And I can't have Sorensen back. He's got to go. In this game, in the second half, the 49ers had very little resistance on defense. Very little resistance.
And one other thing, sorry, not to cut you off, Dan, but one other thing for this defense, I really think the Niners, like my takeaway this year from the Niners defense is they need a linebacker. I know Dre Greenlaw's coming back. And he maybe they don't need him because Dre Greenlaw's coming back, but it's very obvious that if this team doesn't have good linebackers, they are not a good defense. They need to have good linebackers, especially with the wide nine. And D. Winters is a nice player. I don't think he's the guy. And the backups, Bethune, nice player, special teamer. Maybe he's coming on. He's young. He's a rookie. I get it, but they need to get a top tier, top of the line linebacker. Nick Bond of the Eagles. I mean, I keep going back to the Eagles, but Nick Bond of the Eagles has been playing amazing this year, and it makes all the difference because last year they had a bad linebacker group, and they're a much better defense.
Yeah, I agree with you guys regarding Sorensen. I don't understand why you would be like take a guy who's never had the job before and stick him in it just because what you think you're that good. You don't need to go out and get somebody with experience. Experience matters. And you rarely see guys that are learning on the job that become, maybe he becomes a better defensive coordinator in a couple of years. And I know a couple of players have vouched for him and they want Sorensen back. Bosa's on the record, I believe. And was it Warner, I believe?
Don't listen to them.
Yeah, you can't listen to players.
You can't always listen. I mean, if you listen to your players a few years ago, the Warriors would have not had GP2 and they would have had who was that other guard that they wanted? Remember it was a backup guard with the Lakers they wanted, and they told Bob Myers, hey, we want this backup guard, and they're no, we're gonna go with GP2, and it wound up being the right call.
Young?
No, it was the guy played with the Celtics also. I can't think of his name right now.
Yeah, I forget.
Went to Texas. I can't think of his name.
Huh?
No, guard.
The vet. He was an older vet.
Yes.
And he
played for Boston too.
Avery Bradley. There it is.
Avery
Bradley. Thank you.
Jack got that one.
Look at that. Dante Biasotti and
the chat does not miss. The chat is smart.
Chat's fast.
They're real smart.
The chat in here also says, where's this one? I saw one in here. Somebody was commenting on Kev's Cal Poly shirt. Oh, here we go. We got this one, Spencer Stewart. Kevin rocking a slow shirt. Nice. There you go.
Sir.
Go ahead, Danny. You were saying. I mean,
I just think you got to have experience, and they've got to go find somebody that has had, championship pedigree or top defenses in the NFL that have had success. And it's just I bring back Saleh if he's open to it. And team really gelled with Saleh. They loved his, the Niners seem to thrive off of guys like D'Amico and Saleh who are boisterous and they have a lot of emotion. That's what football is, man. Guys get out there and smash mouth, and they want to, especially on the defense, they love to hit. And when their coach is fired up for them, it gets them going. That's why I love that people on the defensive line, they love Kucherik. I mean, the guy's crazy and they love him. They get fired up for coaches like that. And not that you have to have a guy like that. That doesn't mean like just because you're emotional makes you a great coach. But if you're a really good coach and you are emotional, it does seem to give the guys a boost. And I think the players, that's one of the reasons they had a struggle last year with Wilkes. Remember, they said, oh, he's up in the booth. They want him down, giving the guy, and everybody's different. I thought Wilkes was a pretty good coach, though, still. I mean, I think, Wilkes was scapegoated, I think,
largely. Also, there were communication breakdowns, and the whole idea of having Sorensen is that he is an internal guy who, knows the system, knows the players, knows the other coaches. There won't be those internal breakdowns. But to me, what I kept hearing from him in the second half of the year were, I don't have the answers. You ask him a question and he would give you an answer. And basically, if I summed up the answer, it would be, I don't have the answer. It's as simple as that. I mean, if he had the answers, I can't tell you the number of times that I heard Mike Singletary during his regime, when asked questions in the post-game presser, say, I got to watch the film.
Right.
After a while, that's not a cover.
Did you watch the game?
Yeah. Did you watch the game? Were you there? And this guy says, this guy's coverall, and I've heard it like 6 times, and I just roll my eyes every time he says it now. It's like, he's like, just to communicate. What happened on this play? Just a communication breakdown. Well, the whole fucking defense is playing communication. It's a gigantic communication. And if you play well, you communicate well. And if you break down, not communicating is part of it. So communication breakdown is kind of like a cover-all excuse. But guess what? It ain't good enough. And it's like, it's nice that he'll say, hey, man, it's my fault. It starts and stops with me. Well, You're the coordinator, so I would hope that would be the case. And then, but you know what? It's like one of those. It's admirable to fall on the sword, but after a while, you say enough times, it's on me, it's on me, it's on me. Guess what? We take you at your word. Yeah, it's on you. Goodbye.
Yeah, you know what? One of the challenges that I have, and I played basketball a lot longer than I played football, but I watched football for a long time, and I did play, and I have coaches. The 49ers, from a defensive perspective, they got technique issues, man. Even the kid, Ronaldo Green, phenomenal athlete. He's competitive. He wants to do well, but his technique is not great. I'm watching. I mean, like, he fought through the ball and he recovered. But if you watch really good corners, they locate the ball. And for a second-round pick, I mean, against a really good wide receiver, he's going to get burnt. And when I look at even linebackers, even with a broken ankle, Fred Warner is still profoundly one of the better linebackers, and he's not as good as he was when he was healthy. He's still a Pro Bowler. They take a lot of bad angles. That's coaching. So some of the challenges I have with the 49ers from a defensive perspective narrows itself down to coaching. And when I look at the New England Patriots, that's where they were really good. They took average players and coached them up and instinctively put them in the right position, had them react in a certain way where they could make plays. And I think that's part of the defensive problem, and that speaks to coaching. They need teachers who can get guys to play above the talent level. I don't see that.
They just need a higher pedigree of coaching for sure, just in the defense, because everything about this defense this year has been situational, and that goes right back to the coaching. And I think last year the thought process with the Niners was, let's keep our wide nine, let's keep our system, let's get a guy who's going to do it the way we want to do it, because we've had success that way. We've had success with D'Amico, we've had success with Saleh, we've been the top defense. But this year they've fallen off a cliff. I think it's time to just go back to the chalkboard and say, let's get a guy who can do it and throw away what we've done in the past, and let's restart, because they're at a point right now where the defense is just they're not going to stop anyone. They're not looking good at any phase, and they really need help there.
I mean, one thing we have to stop pretending. We have to stop pretending it's all on Sorensen. It's not all on Sorensen. No. It's not all on Brandon Staley. It's not all on these coaches. I mean, to me, there is an obvious regression here. I mean, you went to the Super Bowl 54. You had a young DeForest Buckner and a young Eric Armstead. Now you have Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott. I mean, it's not the same line at all. I mean, you used to have a great D line. Now you have Nick Bosa. You used to have awesome linebackers. Now you have Fred Warner. So they really. They still have the headliners, and those headliners are making the money, but the guys surrounding those headliners, maybe because those guys are making so much money, aren't as good, or because the Niners have just missed in the draft so many times, they aren't as good. But that's really it. I mean, it's Nick Bosa. Is Nick Bosa still Nick Bosa? Yeah, but the rest of that line's just eh. And is Fred Warner still Fred Warner? Yeah, when he's healthy. But now make him hurt, take away Greenlaw, take away Aziz, and put in a bunch of donkeys next to him, and all of a sudden they don't look very good at that second level. They're really young in the secondary, so there's an excuse for why they're a little inconsistent back there. But yeah, they need a new coordinator, but they need new dudes. They need more linebackers. They need defensive tackles. They need defensive ends. They need to upgrade their talent on defense. I mean, this idea that they're going to run it back, and I heard Lynch say this week on the radio, hey, we feel like we've got the components to rebuild this thing. Okay, that's great. If I'm Jed, I want to hear more about that. Okay, tell me, what are the components? What components do you guys have? Because a lot of those same components are the same people that comprised up the personnel room that missed on 12 picks in the first 3 rounds in 3 of the last 4 drafts. I mean, this last draft was great, but 21, 22, 23, the Lions built themselves a dynasty, and you guys almost went over. outside of Banks and Jair Brown, the Niners in 21, 22, and 23 drafts basically just did nothing, got nothing. And the Lions built their entire team. All their great players have come in the last 3 drafts. So it might be time. It's like, if you want to tell me that Lynch is still the right guy, that's fine. But I got to hear more about that. And I got to hear more about why they've missed and why they're not going to miss. Or I got to have, I got to have a consultant in the room. I got to have somebody else there.
Great point, Larry.
You got to have more than one guy doing the evaluating. And if the guy is missed 12 times in 3 years, I'm sorry if he's going to be insulted. Then you know what? If you're going to be insulted, then be insulted. You know what? If me telling you the truth about your drafting insults you, then you deserve to be insulted. Then call yourself insulted and chalk it up to the truth hurts. But that's the reality. The reality is that they've missed a bunch of picks in the last 3 drafts, not this last one, but 21, 22, 23. And that's why they're at where they're at. So if you want, if Lynch wants to tell us that, he's got the right group to rebuild this thing, I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more details about that, because you tell me why it's going to be different. Tell me why the same guys who missed 12 times in the last 3 drafts are going to somehow, run with the Green Bays and the Detroits and the Pittsburghs and the Kansas Cities and the Rams and all these teams that are doing personnel at a higher level more consistently. Tell me why it's going to be different. I'd love to know. I'd love to hear that.
You make a great point. And I was just going to say, before you started going on, that is, look at the top teams. And Kyle has seems like he kind of has this fingerprints on everything in the organization. The first few rounds of the draft, calling all the plays, the defense. It seems like he does. You look at Kansas City, you got Steve Spagnuolo running the defense. And then Andy Reid calls some of the plays, but he also gives Matt Nagy some of those responsibilities and lets Nagy make some of the calls. He's got Brent Veach running the front office. He doesn't tell Veach everything what he has to do. Same with Detroit. They've got Brad Holmes over there making the picks, and then Aaron Glenn running the defense, Ben Johnson running the offense, Dan Campbell oversees the things, but he lets his people do his things. It seems to me that Kyle is spread way too thin and doesn't just allow his guys to do his thing. We saw last year, Steve Wilkes, calling a play, and Kyle, timeout in a key game. What are you doing? Telling his defense. If you're going to run everything, you can't be successful it's kind of the old saying, you're a jack of all trades, master of none. Kyle seems to be a great play caller, and when he's focused on that, but, pick the right people and let them do their jobs, because you're not a very good, you're not the greatest at evaluating talent. Look at your track record. You just named the last 3 years. They've missed on 18 of 20 picks.
They've missed. That's too many. That's way too many. And also, here's the other thing. The last time the 49ers won a Super Bowl, I mean, I hate to go bring this up because it's ancient history at this point, but it almost feels like this is when they lost their way. This is when they lost the map, and they haven't been able to find it since. Well, they've gotten to the Super Bowl 3 times, but they haven't been able to finish the deal. But when they did it last time, they had lost to Dallas in 92. They had lost to Dallas in 93. They had a great coaching staff. They had John Marshall. They had Bill McPherson. They had George Seifert. They had lots of really strong-minded defensive coaches that knew plenty well how to coach. There wasn't anybody looked at the Niners in 92 and 93 and said, man, they just don't have a good enough coaching staff. They had a great coaching staff. But guess what? They still brought in Ray Rhodes. And Ray Rhodes, I guarantee you, told guys, he stepped on some toes. He told guys they were fucked up. He told guys where they were wrong. And they held themselves to that higher standard. And was it comfortable bringing Ray Rhodes in the room? No, I wouldn't describe it as comfortable. I would say it was required, it was necessary, but it wasn't, it wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't one of those things where it was just an obvious thing.
You make a great point. And I mean, Ray Rose went on to be a playoff head coach, with Philly. So,
right.
So
I'm just saying you need a strong-minded guy. The Eagles just had a rough year. They didn't go and bring in somebody that everybody loves. They went and brought in a guy in Vic Fangio who's got pelts on the wall. And here they are. They had made a couple of changes, and they're back on top. They got the number one defense in football, and they're one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl. Why? Because they replaced their inexperienced coordinators with guys who had experience. And then they went and got better players, and now look where they're at. And I just think the 49ers, everybody's so, I don't think they want to bring in a personnel consultant because I think Lynch might be insulted by that. I don't think they want to bring in an offensive coordinator because Kyle might be insulted by that. I don't think they want to bring in a strong-minded defensive coordinator because that may ruffle some feathers. I think the 49ers have operated under, let's make ourselves comfortable. And I think they ought to go for a new game plan of we need to be uncomfortable. We need to make ourselves uncomfortable.
Look at Bill Walsh.
Look at Bill Walsh. Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead, Frank.
Well, one of the things I noticed this year watching the NFL is, I didn't know where the hell. I
get my charger. I'll be right back.
I didn't know where the hell that Shula came from, the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Isn't that Don Shula's grandson?
I think so. There's so many Shulas that are coaches.
Listen, that guy has done a hell of a job as a defensive coordinator, seemingly out of nowhere. And he's doing it with guys who we don't even know, but schematically, he's having an impact. One of the things that happens in practice, I don't care what level it is, the mistakes that you make in the game, you make in practice. The same thing. So when I watch the 49ers, and particularly on defense, when I see guys taking bad angles, they're taking those same angles in practice. Or when I see a DB running and not having that counter in his head where, okay, after 8 seconds, 5 seconds, I got to turn and find the ball. If I don't see that, it really concerns me because those mistakes are happening in practice. I don't want to be a coach who players like. I want to be a coach who players respect. And
Bill Parcells.
And we build authentic relationships. So will they like Sorensen stuff? Why? Because he's not correcting you in practice? That's a bad sign when players say, oh, I like that guy.
I think the Niners need to go out and find a head coach named Bill, like Bill Walsh, Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick. They seem to be some of the greatest coaches in the history of the game. Let me point something out about Bill Walsh. He was an offensive genius. Do you know who called the plays in the 80s? It was Sam Weish. He's the guy that called the plays on the drive. Who was it in the late 80s? It was Mike Holmgren. Who was it in the 90s? It was Mike Shanahan. Bill Walsh, Walsh was gone then, but Seifert. They had offensive coordinators that made the plays. Kyle's running too much. He either needs to be the head coach or the offensive coordinator because he doesn't seem to be doing, and then he's got his fingers in all the draft we hear, and we know that how that's worked out. I mean, let the guys that are experts do what they do because. Well,
and here's the other thing, not to interrupt you, Danny, but a lot of the Niners misses, high profile misses, are guys that Kyle Shanahan probably handpicked.
Right.
CJ Beathard and Jalen Hurd and Joe Williams and offensive skill position guys that he decided he had to have. Pettis. And so a lot of times they traded up
Dante
for
Pettis. That's right.
They traded up for Dante Pettis. They traded up for CJ Beathard. I mean, that's criminal, man. It is criminal when you trade up in the draft for guys who can't play. I mean, if you trade up for a guy, man, that's upping the ante.
Trey Sermon, remember him? They traded up for him too.
Traded up for Trey Sermon. Guess who Walsh traded up for? Jerry fucking Rice. That's who he traded up for. You're
Jerry.
trading up for Dante Pettis. You're trading up for guys who have blue hair and no touchdowns. I mean, seriously, if anything, Kyle Shanahan ought to relinquish all control on personnel and just say. And I asked him this question the other day. I said, Kyle, do you want to be more involved, less involved, or as involved as you normally are? And he, I think he thinks that if he said one of the other, if he said, I want to be more involved, then it would come across like he didn't believe in his personnel department. If he says he wants to be less involved, then all of a sudden that becomes like a big story. Kyle's not going to be as involved, and maybe that's the key. So he said, no, I want to be involved the exact same level that I've been involved in the past. But once again, it's like, okay, we're going to run it back. That's only good if it was worth the first time. When you're this whole like, we've got all the answers, we just got to go do it. It's hard for me to listen to that when I see the results of 20 missed picks in the first 3 rounds during this regime. It's hard for me to go with that when, you single-handedly have drafted your way away from contention. I mean, why are the 49ers not in contention? Because while the Lions were drafting themselves a dynasty, the 49ers were basically gagging all over themselves. I mean, the 49ers if I read you the names, it would make you sick. 3rd-round picks on Cam Latu, 3rd-round picks on kickers, and they're spending 4th-round picks on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, seriously, the 49ers, we've got all the answers. All right, you got 1 year to prove it. And if we'll go with you've got all the answers. But you know what? If you don't have all the answers, you're fucking fired at the end of the year. So that's my whole thing is if you acknowledge that you don't have all the answers and you're willing to, bring on some additional personnel and a draft consultant, then I'm more willing to, think longer term with this regime. But if it's just, hey, get out of our fucking face, we know what the hell we're doing, and nobody else does, well, that's fine. You got this year. And if you don't turn it around, you're gone. That's how Larry, I kind of look at it.
Larry, you're let's say you're own the Niners. You're Jed York's position. What are you doing with this team right now? Tonight, a lot of times there's guys that get cut, coaches get moved off. What are you doing to say out to make this team a championship contender going into next year?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you're Jed, I think you got to realize that you're not a football guy. So you don't make any football suggestions. You go to your football.
But I'm saying you have the football knowledge. You own the team. What are you doing with it tonight?
What do you mean?
Like, what decisions are you making?
If I'm Jed, or if
if you're Larry Krueger and you own the team, it's your team. You're in Jed's position.
If I own the team, what you know. Doing? Okay, this is what I'm doing, and I know this is probably not going to be very. This is not going to win me any.
Don't sell the team. Don't sell the team.
I'm not selling the team. First of all, selling the team is just a joke because the team mints money. So nobody's ever selling any NFL team. The only NFL owners that will ever sell will be ones that have some kind of controversy and they're forced to sell, a la Dan Schneider. Because otherwise, I have an asset that accrues at an incredible rate and pays you a ridiculous amount of cash in the present, but grows at a rate that is unlike any other industry in America. Are you in a rush to sell? No, I think I'll keep it. So, I mean, what I would do is I would say, hey, John, you've given your life to football. You're a Hall of Famer. You're, one of our favorite people. You're a wonderful face of this franchise. You're a wonderful president. But you know what? You spent your whole career learning to play strong safety. I need someone who spent their entire career learning to scout football players. And I want you to kick yourself upstairs to be the president. I'll give you a raise. I'll pay you more. And you're still in the room with some say, but you don't have final say. We've had too many misses. I'm going to bring in some super sharp director of college scouting. What are you looking for? You're looking for somebody who is a director of college scouting. Where did Brad Holmes come from? He was the Rams director of college scouting. And then the Lions picked him up.
Wow.
So I would go find probably either the Ravens or the Chiefs or the Steelers. I'd take the Rams. There's 4 or 5 teams around the league that really do
I like
well.
the Ravens. The Ravens always draft well.
Yeah, Eric DaCosta, Rozzie Newsome before him. Go find a really highly thought of director of college scouting who's young and aggressive and smart, and make him the architect of the team. And then make that guy work with Shanahan. Shanahan still has say, but he doesn't have final word. And then that's where I would start things right there. I would kick Lynch from general manager to president. I'd give him a raise, but I'd take away personnel, draft control, and I'd go get a director of college scouting, and I would empower that guy to run my personnel. I would tell Kyle, I'm giving you a raise as well, and maybe even an extension, but you're not the final say on personnel. We're structuring this differently. And if you don't want to be here for it, that's fine too. But I'm going to give you a raise and an extension as long as you are cool with, going in after this young college, personnel director. And then I would go hire. I'd probably go since I want to keep my wide 9. I probably go talk to Robert Saleh about an assistant head coach in charge of defense position where he's making quite a bit more money, maybe even head coaching type money. If I'm Jed, I'm going to show the fans and the players and the coaches my commitment, because I'm going to spend lots and lots of my money where it's not capped, which is assistant coaches and personnel department people. And I'm going to hire a few more people, and I'm going to hold my guys to really high standards. I'm going to demand that we bring in a veteran defensive coordinator who's done it before. I'm going to go after a top level special teams coordinator that I think is going to be the best in pro football. And I'm going to draft defensive front 7 guys and offensive linemen. And I'm going to build a fortress around Brock Purdy, and I'm going to build speed on defense, and I'm going to win a Super Bowl within 3 years.
I mean, I hate he got fired, but the name that comes to the top of my head is Gerard Mayo. Now, I would,
very sharp.
I would contact him to see if he's
for DC.
Yes,
DC,
absolutely. Yeah. He might be pissed off, but I mean, I would talk to that guy, man.
I think the wild card and all this team building stuff really goes down to who's making the decisions in the early rounds, because I think the assumption is that it's like a team, it's like a team decision. And then sometimes it's like, oh, well, Lynch makes that decision. But we also know that Kyle definitely has his hands in those early rounds. So it's like, who's really making those calls? Because we also know that it's been reported that Kyle wasn't really high on Trey Lance as much as other people in the building. And then there's other reports that like Ricky Pearsall seems more like a Kyle Shanahan guy than a John Lynch guy, or like this, that, and the other. But who's making the early round calls? Because it's not working out. It's not working out. Javon Kinlaw, Solomon Thomas, like all these picks are just not working out. I think that needs to be reevaluated. And I really do like that. I like your take on getting the scouting director. I would poach any of those. I take the Steelers scouting director. The Steelers
director of college scouting. That's the key, because you got to do it in the draft. So you got to have somebody. Right. See, part of the reason nobody talks about this, but part of the reason that the 49ers bypassed on Mahomes and Watson was that they were hired right now. This is when they were hired, in early January. Well, guess what? I mean, the draft process, I already have a really good idea of the entire draft class already, because I've been grinding watching players since May, since spring camp, going into training camp. And definitely I've seen a ton of teams and a ton of players since, season started in September. When the Niners hired Lynch and Shanahan, Lynch was not anybody's director of college scouting. that was the mistake. See, if you hired a director of college scouting, then you didn't have to kind of pick it up on the fly. But they were like, oh, well, you know what? It doesn't matter if we have to pick it up on the fly. We'll just get the right structure. But they punted on the wrong quarterback class. They punted on a quarterback class that netted the greatest quarterback of his era. And really, if you want to go back to the 49ers, why they've had the run they've had, they've had a lot of success. And they've had a lot of success drafting on day 3. They've had a lot of struggles, though. I mean, you could almost point to like their issues as early mistakes that they've allowed to compound themselves. They early mistake was that they didn't scout the draft class, the 2017 draft class for quarterbacks, and didn't go after Mahomes. And so because they didn't go after Mahomes, they're waiting on Cousins, and then they made the trade for Jimmy, and then they realized Jimmy wasn't good enough, and then they decided to go all in on a young guy because they want a quarterback with a rookie contract, and they made the big mistake on Trey Lance, and they've been chasing their tail ever since as an organization, all because they didn't handicap the 2017 quarterback class. So they made an initial mistake, and they've compounded their mistake ever since. The other mistake that they've compounded ever since is the DeForest Buckner deal. They decided to trade Buckner or Armstead. It wound up being Buckner, and they've rued the day they've done that. They tried to replace him with Solomon Thomas. It didn't work. They tried to replace him with Javon Kinlaw. It didn't work. They've tried to replace him over and over and over again. Javon Hargrave. It didn't work. They have spent literally this entire regime trying to make up for missing on Mahomes and trading away DeForest Buckner, and they've compounded their mistake like 9 different times, and they've turned this thing into like defining misses. So they didn't just miss on the quarterback; they missed on the quarterback, and it screwed them. And they've missed on the defensive tackle, and it has absolutely screwed them because they've wanted to make the defensive line the focal point of their roster. So to me, those 2 moves have really burned them. But they also have saved themselves with some good drafting in the day 3 of the draft, and some great trades. Right, the Trent Williams trade, amazing. The Christian McCaffrey trade was great. The Charles Omenihu trade was really good. I mean, they made some really good trades, and they did really well on day 3 of the draft, and it's overcome their misses on the first 2 days up to this point. But now it's caught up to them. And now it's like, I think right now, if I said, what's the Niners' biggest problem? Everybody is too goddamn comfortable. Shanahan's too comfortable because, Jed, won't stand up to him. Lynch is too comfortable because, he's respected and he's a Hall of Famer. So nobody will tell him that, what's up in the color of the sky in his personnel evaluation world. Sorensen's too sucked up to by the players. Everybody's we love. I mean, literally Shanahan 3 weeks ago was telling us how great Sorensen was. But 3 weeks ago, Chris Forrester was telling us how great Jake Brendel was. So everybody's too comfortable. These offensive linemen are too comfortable with this coach. The 49ers are too comfortable with their defensive coordinator. The 49ers are way too comfortable with the special teams coordinator. They're way too comfortable with how they're treating their kicker. They're making too many decisions based in the fear of what happens next. Oh my God, what if we get rid of Jake Moody? What if he finds himself in Buffalo in 3 years? You know what? Then so be it. Then he finds himself in Buffalo in 3 years. What you're gonna keep driving your team off the cliff every Sunday because you got a kicker in a league where a 51-yarder is a gimme and he can't make 45-yard field goals with any consistency at all. I mean, they just there's a little bit, everybody's a little too soft with one another. The media is a little too soft on the team. The fans, I think, are a little too forgiving. I think everybody needs to have their feet held to the fire a little bit. And to me, it's not about make yourself comfortable. It's about make yourself uncomfortable. And if that means, guess what? You might have to bring in another running back. That's going to make Juice uncomfortable, or that's going to make CMC uncomfortable. So what? You may have to move off of Juice. That's going to make Kyle uncomfortable. So what? You may have to bring in another receiver, and that may make Debo or Ayuk or Pearsall uncomfortable. So what? You know what I mean? You may need to change out your defensive line and your defensive coordinator, and that may make Warner and Bosa uncomfortable. So what? I just feel like
I got something else that would make
they're too beholden to, let's make everybody happy. And happiness is not what wins championships.
One other thing that might help makes things a little more uncomfortable. How about Jed take a little advice from his uncle Eddie and say, maybe put a little pressure on Kyle and say, we don't have a winning season this next year, where there may be some changes. Eddie was threatening to fire Bill Walsh. Look at the 86 draft. I want to talk about that real quick because John McVay was the general manager, and him and Walsh traded back 4 times. When do the 49ers now trade back? They're always trading up and getting crap. I mean, they traded back 4 times in what was probably the greatest draft, the 1986 draft. And John McVay was a master. He was with the Niners.
Walsh. I mean, Walsh had the conviction too. Supposedly, Walsh went into the room and showed James Madison video of Charles Haley, and just said to the room, "This is Charles Haley. We will be drafting him." Now, I mean, they drafted him, I think, in like maybe the 4th round or the 5th round. It wasn't like they took him 9th overall.
Nope.
So, I love that Walsh had the conviction to say, you know what? I just watched the film and I saw Jerry Rice, and I'm gonna trade up and draft him. I don't care if he's from Archie Cooley's tiny little Mississippi Valley State. I don't care if he didn't play in the SEC. I don't care. I know football players, and that guy can play. And the same thing with Charles Haley. I mean, if you watch Charles Haley's film at James Madison, I mean, imagine what it looked like. I mean, Charles Haley was an awesome player, Hall of Famer. He played at a very small school in Virginia. That program now is a little bit bigger, but then, I mean, I guarantee you, he was absolutely destroying people in this film. And I'm sure Walsh saw it and just said, "Oh my God, we got to have that guy." Well, you know what? They need somebody with that level of personnel, chops, and conviction.
Let me ask you guys this. If you're rebuilding the 49ers, what are you choosing to focus on more? Like, say you have to choose to focus on one side of the ball more. Are you choosing the offense or are you choosing the defense?
Defense. I mean, offensively to me, I mean, I don't know what your position is, but I mean, when I look at their offense, clearly they need help along the offensive line. I don't know if you handle that via free agency or you attack that in the middle ground of the middle rounds and you coach guys up. But I want to see them go out and get a complimentary tight end for Kittle because they need it. Even today, their offense was able to navigate the ball down the field a little bit by going to Sarbert. And Sarbert is not, he's not a pass catching tight necessarily, but just putting that in the air that we will throw the ball to the tight end beyond Kittle, I thought was very effective today. Defensively, I think they need more playmakers. I do. I think they got ball hawkers. They got pretty good tacklers, but they need a corner to complement Ward that can really cover. They need a dynamic linebacker. And if Floyd is your second banana, your second best defensive lineman to Bosa, you're in trouble because Floyd's a good player, but he's not a great player. So I would focus my attention on defense. That's what I would do.
I would more focus on positions rather than one side of the ball or the other. And
no, but I'm saying if you had to choose, Danny, what are you choosing?
Because what I want to do is focus on I want a couple of tackles and I want a couple of defensive tackles. I think the trenches are so crucial to building an NFL team that you have to. I look at San Diego. I keep calling them San Diego. I'm old school. The Chargers. They have Joe Alt, who they picked this year as one tackle, and they had Slater as the other tackle. And then what do? They already have the quarterback. So then they go get the receiver, the possession receiver they need in McConkey. Okay. But you can do that once you build the line. And they've got bookend tackles for the next 6-7 years that should be all pro caliber. And then, you can get the center. I think the tackles and all positions of the line are important, but man, those tackles are so important for pass protection, and the center is crucial. I just think I love what the Chargers are doing. I love what the Broncos are starting to do. And you look at the pedigree of these coaches, it's Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton. And then you got John Harbaugh in Baltimore. You look at the coaching of these top teams, and they're there every year. Andy Reid and Harbaugh and the Chargers, they're going to be like the Niners were when he came here. They're going to ascend. And
I don't disagree with your point, Dan, but the 49ers defense we've seen this year, even with the injuries, they're bad. They gave up 47 points today. That's a different universe from what we've watched the 49ers in the past. Offensively, with all the things that we're talking about, when they're healthy, they still put points up. They're still putting points on the board. Yeah. Defensively, they're getting pumped. Teams run the ball against them. Teams throw the Kyler Murray, who people look at him and say, well, I don't know if he's the guy. That guy looked like Johnny Unitas today.
If I was choosing a side, I'd choose defense as well. I think, like, looking at this year, obviously the Niners didn't play championship level anything this year, offense or defense. But if you're pointing fingers at what went wrong, there's less to point on the defensive side because the offense had so many injuries. Brandon Ayuk injured, Christian McCaffrey injured, George Kittle was banged up some games. Trent Williams was out multiple games. Brock Purdy missed a game. I know we don't like, all we're doing is making excuses here, but if we want to make excuses, you can make excuses for the offense. I don't really see that with the defense. They had some injuries. Yeah, Javon Hargrave got injured, but he wasn't playing very well before he got injured. I just don't think this defense is very good. And all the good teams have good defenses. You need a defense wins championships. That's like the saying. You got to have a good defense. I would draft heavily for a better defense. And just because I've also seen this comparison made too. The Lions, they're injured and they're winning. Well, they are injured, but Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't injured, and both the running backs aren't injured, and their best offensive lineman isn't out. Like that, they still have a lot of their stars and their key players on their team. And where they did lose players is on their defense, and their defense is bad now. And that's why I'm taking back my take on that they're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't think that their defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. Because I think that's so important to winning a Super Bowl. So I would focus on drafting defense.
Well, I would go
Mason Graham. I'd go Mason Graham.
You can make a point about the Chiefs. The Chiefs' offense isn't that great, but their defense is stellar.
Mm-hmm.
Not today.
Exactly.
They didn't even play anybody today. I don't think they wanted the Bengals in the playoffs, honestly.
Think about it last night. The Pittsburgh Steelers, people talk about, oh, well, you know what? It came down to execution last night. The Pittsburgh Steelers should have beat Cincinnati last night. They had 4 key drops. And offensively, they're not very good. But they held one of the most potent offenses in the NFL to 19 points. Why? Because they got a good defense. That's why. So the 49ers, if they shore up their defense in terms of personnel and maybe make some changes in coaching, I think they're going to kick ass in the division next year. As competitive as it is, I think they'll be fine.
Here's my fear about next year. They go 11-6 and they win the division, and everybody thinks they're back, but they had a 4th place schedule and they get rocked in the playoffs, because I don't know how long it's going to take. I think this team is all of a sudden very old at many key positions and slow. They're not good on either front, defensive line or offensive line. They got Bosa and Trent Williams, and I guess you could say Pooney's coming along, but the rest of the positions, they look,
I agree
below average. And then you've got your receivers. Your receivers, in my opinion, are pretty much average to below average. I think Pearsall's going to be a good third receiver. He's going to become a possession receiver. I think he gets better. But
what about Jennings? Jennings looks good.
Jennings is fine, but Ayuk's out. Debo, to me, is easy to cover. I don't see, you got to have better receivers in this league. And Pearsall is not a guy that is, he's not.
No, he's a third receiver is what he is.
Yeah, he is.
That's what he is.
And you drafted him in the
And
first round.
You don't want Jawan Jennings to be the guy. Like, you want him to be the guy, but you don't want him to be the number one. He's
I'm not
built
giving
to
up
be
on
that.
Ayuk, and I'm not giving up on Debo, and I expect him to
I
find another guy in this
I don't
year's
think you
draft.
see Ayuk until November at the earliest, probably closer to December, and I don't think he's going to be the same when he comes back. So I think next year's is probably just a gone year for Ayuk, and I don't think Debo's going to be better. I mean, Debo is what we saw of him in 21. He was like, the cover. He was a Madden cover boy, right? I mean, he was the guy. I don't know if he was on the cover, but he was the talk of. I mean, he was like at the end of the year when they beat the Rams to get into the playoffs and all that game. He was like, oh my gosh, Debo is the best player in the game. He was listed as the best player in the game. Everybody wanted him. And now he's a shell of himself. He looks slower. He looks like every time he takes hits, he gets injured. He doesn't play full seasons. I don't know what you're going to do. So I don't see this team. I think they're probably, like Larry said, the bad drafts is catching up to them. 3 years of bad drafts. And now you're starting to see it, and it's going to take this year to look like a pretty good draft. You have another good draft next year, and then maybe the year after that, you're starting to ascend again. And I do think they'll have probably a winning record next year because their schedules should be a cakewalk.
Well, it's like they had this last draft is one of the deepest, like one of the best drafts they had in a long time. A lot of the players they drafted hit, and they still don't have depth. So yes, it is catching up to them. I mean, like it's amazing. It's like Dominic Pooney and Malik Mustafa are really, really good players that you got in the third and fourth round,
right?
And you still don't have any depth. Like they're your saving grace. Imagine if you didn't have Dominic Pooney and Malik Mustafa. Who would be playing safety right now? Tashawn Gibson? He'd be starting. Like, I mean, it would be ridiculous. That's amazing. And Dominic Pooney was amazing he's the best right guard in the rookie class, and you got him in the third round. If that didn't happen, where would they be right now?
Right.
So they need to trade. They honestly should trade back. They should trade back a few times and get 3 or 4 picks.
Well, they're going to have the 11th pick, and they could. And I'm just concerned about it because I do think next year, because of the schedule, they have a winning record, and I think it's going to be fool's gold. I think people are going to get all excited that they're going to be really good, and they could win the division, 10-7, 11-6, wins the division in that NFC West, and then all of a sudden the following year they get a first place schedule, and because they don't have the depth. And those 3 years of bad drafts, we're seeing it. It's hurting.
Let's not underestimate coaching, though. I mean, think about the Chargers last year. Jim Harbaugh comes in, and he establishes from day one all of that mistake shit that was happening last year. We're not going to do it. All right? The 49ers had 13 penalties today. Good teams don't have 13 penalties. So I'm looking at a mindset change where this team shores up the fundamentals offensively and defensively. And as you said, Dan, they need to draft better, that they need to do a better job in free agency. But good teams don't make mistakes. The 49ers made a lot of mistakes this year, and I think that led to a lot of losses.
Yeah.
They got to find some foundation pieces too, guys. Back with you after I did my segment over on KMBR, but they got to find a real. I mean, nothing against Colton, but they got to find a real right tackle. They got to find a 6'6", 330-pound right tackle. I thought it was kind of one of the guys who I enjoyed watching in these last couple of games was this gigantic Austin Pleasance offensive lineman. And, he had a couple of really nice blocks. And it's like, you know what? The Niners have always gone for these smaller, more athletic offensive linemen. And I understand the desire for that. But, man, it's really nice when you do have a big-bodied offensive lineman that can move somebody in the run game. I mean, it's nice to see. So I'd like to see them invest in a true right tackle. I think this is the year where, maybe you go D tackle, O tackle, D tackle, O tackle, in your first 4 picks. I mean, you may want to, to me, I know I would. So the question was asked before I jumped off. Do you emphasize the offense or defense in the draft? I think that you need a bunch of pieces, right? They need a legitimate second quarterback that threatens Brock Purdy. You need at least 2 offensive linemen in this draft, probably a starting center and a starting tackle. You need another speedy wide receiver that stretches the field. You need a couple of good tight ends to go with George Kittle. You probably could use one more dynamic back in the backfield because of the health situation with Christian McCaffrey. So that's what you need on offense. But on defense, I think you need basically everything. D tackles, D ends, linebackers, free safeties, multiple corners. And to me, you can sometimes find guys that can fit your scheme on the offensive side of the ball. Sometimes you can find guys that will fit you that other people aren't necessarily seeing, where on defense you typically need athletes. So I would say go for the athletes. And also I would say get creative. I mean, like I'm watching Florida a couple weeks ago. They've got a 490-pound nose guard named Deshaun Watson.
490?
They were they were handing the ball off to him at the end of the bowl game.
490.
He's 490. He's 490. And
490.
he's just, but he's an athlete. He's an athlete, but he's just, he's way, way overweight.
Bigger than Refrigerator Perry was.
But I mean, why not take a flyer, get an extra 7th round pick, and take a look at that guy and see what that guy can do for you at center. I mean, teach him to snap the ball and move out of his stance. I mean, if you have a 490-pound behemoth of a man at center, something tells me he's going to be able to stay in front of some of those defensive tackles. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, think outside the box. Start thinking outside the box. There's a Ole Miss defensive tackle named J.J. Pegues. Lane Kiffin is using him in short yardage and on the goal line. He's never been stopped.
You talking about Desmond Washington? Watson? Yes, Desmond Watson?
Desmond Watson.
Yeah, they say he's 449 pounds. I don't know but that's still huge.
He was 470.
Oh, geez, there's a picture of him here picking up the
He's incredibly strong.
He's just picking up, I don't know if it's a quarterback or somebody, but he's holding him like a baby, just cradling him.
He's a legit 4 1/4.
Oh my! They say he's 450. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, the Eagles took Mekhi Becton, who last year was a bust of a tackle for the New York Jets, and what did they do? They plugged him in at right guard next to Lane Johnson. And they've got Saquon Barkley, and they've got a big physical offensive line, and they wear your shit down. I saw the second half of Eagles Commanders a month ago. The Commanders looked great in that game. In the fourth quarter, the Eagles just ran right over them because they wear you down because they got gigantic 380-pound Mekhi Becton at right guard. So, yeah, is he a tackle? No. You know, you need better feet to play tackle. You can't just be a huge behemoth. But to play guard in the NFL, you can be a gigantic body like that, or center to play in the interior. And the Eagles are doing it. And look at the job that they do. And when they get in short yardage, guess what? When Kyle Shanahan got to 4th and 1 from his own 39, if that had been Nick Sirianni, they're tush pushing it and they're staying on the field. I mean, the 49ers cannot run when they need to run. They can't pass when they need to pass. They can't get a first down at the end of games. They can't put games away offensively. So it's always, everything's on their defense. All I'm saying is Kyle Shanahan's got to start thinking outside the box. You got to start thinking about, bigger. I mean, think about it this way. You have a Pro Bowl fullback and you're horrible in short yardage and on the goal line. You just ran 3 pass plays from 2nd and goal from the 4 a couple games ago because you don't believe that you can run inside the 5. And you have Jake Brendel, who Chris Forster will remind you was a Pro Bowl alternate once upon a time as a center. And you have Kyle Juszczyk, who's a Pro Bowl fullback. You're one of like 5 teams in all of football that even carries a fullback. And you theoretically have the best fullback because he's a Pro Bowler. And yet you can't run inside the 5. So what good is it to have Kyle Juszczyk? I'd rather put a 4-2 burner on the field at wide receiver than put a fullback if I can't run in short yardage, if he can't block anybody, if he doesn't move anybody in the run game. It's the old, Office Space. What would you say you do here? I don't know what to say. That to me, if Kyle's going to reinvent himself, I think he's got to start reinventing himself at tight end and at wide receiver, or tight end and at fullback. Jim Harbaugh goes to the Chargers. He drafts Scott Matlock, a defensive lineman, a ginger defensive lineman from Boise State. He's used him all season long as his fullback. He's paying him the league minimum. He doesn't have to ever give him the ball. He's a better blocker than Juszczyk. And the Niners are paying Juszczyk a sizable amount of money to do way, way less. Make that make sense. So I would like to see Kyle reinvent himself at tight end by getting another receiver who's dynamic, maybe another strong inline blocker, but maybe at center with a big-bodied guy, maybe at fullback with a 300-pound fullback instead of, how about this? Let Guerendo, use Guerendo for all the things that you want to use Juszczyk for that require athleticism, and then use Watson for all the things, or JJ Pegues or one of these big-bodied guys for everything that he can't do. All the power elements of fullback. Go get a real power player, because right now you have a fullback and yet you have none of the benefits of having a fullback. Why do it? Why not have another 4-3 burner out there if you can't? Why have a fullback if you can't run it on the goal line? I mean, the Niners get the 1st and goal from the 5. They don't even think to run the ball. And you got a Pro Bowl fullback. That doesn't make any sense.
I just watched some highlights of that guy while we're
Deshaun Watson
or the Desmond Watson. We got a
Desmond Watson.
Deshaun
yeah,
Watson.
he's as a defensive nose guard. I was just watching to see if they move him. He's not really quick. He's just huge and he moves a little slow, but nobody moves him off the line of scrimmage. And he gets into the backfield. He gets into the backfield and he just takes guys and just throws them down.
Oh, he's enormously heavy. I mean, just imagine if that's your center and you try to do the tush push. Hey, Brock, this guy's gonna hike it behind you, and then he's just gonna run forward. Just hide behind him and run forward. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's just, all I'm saying is it's time to think outside the box and start thinking like the way the Eagles think. Mekhi Becton did nice things for the Eagles offensive line, and yet he was a bust for the Jets. So, the Eagles found a way to turn a Jets bust into a short yardage, nightmare situation for opposing teams. I mean, could you imagine trying to block that guy? All right, let's hit some supers here before we jet. We've been doing this for a while.
I was going to say I was muted, but the one nice thing is that I think it's like the Niners are gonna have to make a lot of tough decisions and make or let go of a lot of players that they like. Let's say it's a lot harder to do that when you go to the Super Bowl because it's just like, oh, you won, you were successful with them. Like after a season of being 6-11, it's a lot easier to say, hey, we love you, but it's not working out. Like it's like if the Niners were to say like let go of Kyle Juszczyk, which I don't think they will necessarily. It's a lot easier to say that when you're 6-11 and your team sucks and your offense was stunk the whole year and you couldn't convert on third down when you don't succeed. You know what I mean? So I feel like even though Chris Forster sits at the press conference and says, "Oh, I love Aaron Banks. I think he's awesome. He's so great." It's like, man, I don't know. He didn't play very well, and the team didn't play very well. So I think they can make a tough decision and let a few players go.
I think
it's hard to make tough decisions, and these guys are very loyal to one another, and I get it. And they're always going to be loyal to each other over the media, which come on, that makes perfect sense.
I'll tell you one thing I learned.
Make some tough calls, man.
Quick is I should have known the Niners weren't going to be that good this year because the Super Bowl loss. I heard Debo say it, and I didn't catch it. I heard him on a podcast talking about how depressed he was after the loss and that it took like weeks and that the team went through that. And if you look at all the past Super Bowl losers, I mean, the Bengals came close to winning it against the Rams a few years ago. They really have been kind of inconsistent. The Rams have been inconsistent since they won it. The teams that seem
Eagles
to lose,
the year after.
The Eagles, yeah. You just whoever gets in the Super Bowl this year and loses, I'm betting against them this year to have a
well,
winning,
Danny, I mean, I mean, the way this works. I mean, there's just a lot of elements within the sport that people don't talk about that really are all designed to look at the Lions. Goff just threw an interception on the 5-yard line.
I saw that. Yeah. Dang.
Unbelievable. Jared Goff. Terrible interception to a defensive lineman on the 5-yard line.
Should have been a safety earlier too, because he threw the ball. It was grounding in the end zone, and they didn't call it.
What a bad break.
Though. We knew. And I don't know what the ultimate score is going to be. I'm not watching the game, but you knew that Brian Flores' defense was going to cause problems for Detroit tonight. I mean, Detroit might win, but they were not going to have a happy party with Minnesota's defense.
Minnesota's a very well coached team.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Excellent.
They are. Both sides of the ball.
Yes.
L. Kurtz's sources say they're firing Sorensen and Staley. Have you seen anything anywhere, Kev, that
I saw
that says that?
So 49ers News 24/7. He's a mutual follower of mine. He seems like he sometimes has news, but some people say that he isn't credible. So I'll pull it up and we can read it.
But is he saying that Sorensen and Staley are fired?
Yeah, he said that Sorensen and Staley. He said that Schneider's fired and Sorensen. Let me pull it up.
I mean, it's really bad form to wish for people to lose their jobs, right? Because come on, I mean, we all know it's just bad form, but it's
so
also
this is the tweet. He said, breaking news, the 49ers are planning to make big changes in their coaching staff and medical staffs, with the first move being the firing of special teams coordinator Brian Schneider, per source.
Yeah. I mean, today was another breakdown on special teams. I mean, how many special teams breakdowns can one team go through before eventually you got to do something?
It's kind of interesting. He says coaching and medical staffs, like they're going to fire their team doctors or something. I don't.
Trainers, what?
Well, they've changed out the medical staff as recently as their last injury-filled year of 2020. So we got this one from Micah Cervantes. He says,
let me just read this one. This is the second one he tweeted. The 49ers will reevaluate their defensive coordinator and defensive position coaches in the coming days, per source. Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley are not guaranteed to return in 2025. Source said they're both likely out.
They both should be out. My God, I mean, you can't just go to the podium and say communication breakdown. That's not a coverall.
Wow, Darnold threw a wide
Simple
open.
as that. Okay, we got this one from Micah Cervantes. He says, we need to trade for Joe Milton as a backup and maybe the future starter. He would compete with Brock, make Brock uncomfortable, like you said. Did you guys see Joe Milton today?
I saw him in college. His numbers today were decent. I don't agree with that.
The Krug Show Instagram and I guess YouTube Shorts has a Joe Milton short that I personally made. I don't know, like in May or no, not even May, probably like February or April.
It was before the draft.
March or April of last year of Joe Milton, and you talking about Joe Milton. You are a huge Joe Milton guy. I have friends that went to Tennessee and they're like, yeah, he looks amazing, but he'll throw picks like nobody's business. But he looked great today, like really good.
Well, first of all, none of these guys, when I say these guys, I'm talking about quarterback prospects coming out of the college game. None of these quarterbacks are ever ready-made. Almost all of them need development. Mm-hmm. So I would love to develop a player who's 6'6", who can throw it 90 yards in the air and can move the way that Joe Milton can move. Now, he's a huge guy. And today, I loved the way he looked. I mean, they moved him out of the pocket. He was making plays. He's got a huge howitzer of an arm. We know that, and great stature. So I don't know. I mean, I'll say this: guys get better. Guys who work at it get better. So it's all about you got to find out. Not all the things that you can find out are not the most important things. How big's his hand? What's his 40? What's his height? What's his 10-yard split? Those things that you can quickly find out at the combine are not the things that you need to find out about. When a guy's got this kind of talent, this kind of physical ability, you just have to find out what kind of guy is he, how important is football to him, and how much does he want to work at it. If he wants to work at it and football is important to him, then I absolutely want Joe Milton. You know what I mean? But that's what I've got to find out. Not height, weight, speed, not arm strength, not even, stats from college. I just need to know, does he love football? Sorry, I'm sneezing left and right here, guys. Here we go. I got this one from Chris Topher. We'll miss this show, guys. Maybe do one each game of the playoffs. Love listening every week from Fort Worth, Texas. Oh, no, we will be on after the playoff games. We will absolutely be on after the playoff games. Nando L says some analysts are pointing out inconsistent orientation of football on Moody's misses. Attention to detail is always lacking with the entire coaching staff. What's the most discouraging part about Jake's misses? There's no consistency to the misses. He misses it right, he misses it left, he pushes it, he hooks it. His feel is just all over the place.
I saw someone tweet out, I think it was Rich Madrid, tweet out after the first miss kick, the first make he had actually, a video of Pat O'Donnell holding the kick and being like, oh, ever since Pat O'Donnell's been holding it, it's been, he's been missing a lot. And look at the way he's holding it. Maybe Danny could speak to this because Danny's, our resident kicker. But that second kick that he missed, I was looking closely at the hold. And to me, I mean, I don't know anything, but to me, it looked like a good hold and he still missed it.
Yeah, he's a professional. He's got to make him. Holder does play a big role.
You're muted, Dad.
A Holder.
There we go. Much better. Better. There we go.
When they bring in the rules analyst, it's like, let's bring in Danny, the kicker analyst.
Let's bring in Mike Springer right now, who just stayed at the Courtyard Marriott last night.
It does make a difference, the hold, but I don't think I think he's just in his head. I mean, he's missing. He's barely missing too. It's crazy. They're like a foot to 2 feet at the most, left or right. But you got to make those kicks. I mean, what was it, a 47-yarder he missed today?
49.
41. He missed 51 the other day. Maybe that was last week. Yeah, 47 I think today.
And the one he made, the 51 he made today, he looked like he didn't even hit it well. It was
Yeah.
a low liner.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought, Mike, is he going to get there?
Here's
It's just weird. He's just not, his mechanics or something's really off because, like you said, Larry, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
His kickoffs, he said kickoffs, and then his onside kick last week. He's just like, there's just no consistency. It's just like,
Yeah, he probably didn't have a lot of confidence from that first one. It's like when you're
Right.
shooting a free throw and it like rims around and it's like, oh, that
Yeah.
probably that doesn't always go in, but I got lucky.
I've
there.
never seen an NFL kicker though, like miss. I mean, his kicks are. I mean, like to make that kick and not even hit it right is weird. And then he hits other kicks that it looks like he hits them good, but then they're off. He's just they're. I don't know.
He wasn't like that at Michigan, so it's
No, he
I
wasn't.
don't
There's
even
something
though
in his
everyone's calling
head.
for his head, I don't want to get rid of him. I would keep him on the team and let him, compete for a job at least. Give him a little bit more time because he's like a prototypical like he has the leg. Like he has the leg to be great. He just needs to work on his technique.
You can bring him back next year, but you got to bring in competition. You can't bring him back as the sole kicker. People are going to lose their S, and rightfully so.
That's fine by me.
Yeah, but you want if he's in camp, and that's fine. If he's in camp, I would move him on. But if he's in camp, that's fine. But you get somebody in there who's a viable competitor for him. And what's really the damnedest thing is they had this kicker, Jake Moody. He starts off 12 for 13. And then he gets hurt on a coverage play. They go to backup kickers. They had to go to two different ones, but those backup kickers went 8 for 8. Then the week comes and they're like, oh, he's going to be out several weeks. It's a high ankle sprain. Then all of a sudden, a few weeks later, they're like, well, he's back. And I thought that seemed really weird. So I interviewed him that week that he was coming back. And I said, Jake, how are you feeling physically? And he goes, I feel fine. He goes, the only time I feel it is since it's on my actual kicking leg is I sometimes feel it at the point of kicking. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that bother you that if you feel pain at the point when the ball hits the foot? And he's like, no, I can kick around it. But since then, he's been horrible.
That makes almost too much sense why his kicks are so off is because if it hurts his ankle or foot when he kicks it at impact, that's why the ball, I mean,
right.
like
it could be kicking around pain. He could be kicking around pain. I mean, we've all had something where, you've heard pitchers, hey, I was throwing around the pain and then I hurt myself worse. Frank, what were you going to say? You were going to jump in.
Well, I just think that, I mean, if you watch football, this is the life of a kicker. I'm even the kid. He's not a kid, but with the kicker, I think he's a Korean kicker for Atlanta. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to move on from him because this dude was automatic, and then all of a sudden he went through a bad spell. And he started missing kicks. I don't
he's
have
injured
any,
right now too.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was missing a lot of kicks before he got injured. I don't have any reservations about Moody. Was it Moody? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, finding Jake Moody finding himself and becoming a very successful kicker in the NFL. But kickers go through stuff. This is from the neck up. And like you guys are saying, bring him in, have competition there, be willing to move on from him if he doesn't have it. But it doesn't mean that he's not going to be a successful kicker. But the kicker must perform on a successful team because it affects morale. So he has to do his job. He can't do his job here. You have to chalk up your losses and move on and get somebody who can make routine kicks.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I don't know. Like the Niners could get rid of Jake Moody, and I think that he's definitely done enough to get to warrant being cut. But the nightmare scenario, and I don't even know if it really is a nightmare, is what happened with the Patriots, because the Patriots drafted a kicker in this draft in the 4th round, and he was the kicker for the Cardinals today, Chad Ryland, right? So, and he looked pretty good. So, right. I mean, the Patriots don't really have a kicker, right? They have Sly, I think, who's an okay kicker. So, are the Patriots kicking themselves? Maybe, maybe not. So, I guess it's kind of one of these things where it's like you can always find another kicker, but are you passing up the great one?
I'll tell you the thing about Moody.
Just compete. Just if any area that you're not sure about, just bring in competition. Just make sure you compete. Just that's all you can do. All you can do is say, Jake, obviously it hasn't been your year, but we still believe in you. We'll see you in July. But when you show up in July, hold on a second. When you show up in July, you're going to have to compete for your job. Simple as that. And
in
if
college,
if that's an issue, then maybe we'll just cut you right here, because he needs to. Everybody, I would say Purdy will be better with competition. I think Lynch would be better if they had another set of eyes on the draft. I think ultimately, I think they have to replace the defensive coordinator. I think they need a star defensive coordinator. I mean, Danny said it earlier. If you're going to win a Super Bowl in the NFL, you got to beat the Chiefs. Okay. So the Chiefs have the best quarterback, the best offensive play caller, the number one special teams coach, and one of, if not the number one defensive coordinator. So if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you might want to start thinking about, upping your game a little bit, because they don't just have Andy Reid and a great quarterback. They got Andy Reid, a great quarterback, and the best coordinators at the other two spots. And it's working for them. If you're going to beat them, do you really think you're going to beat them with just some first-year coordinator that doesn't really have that much experience? I mean, it's going to take a Vic Fangio. It's going to take a Jim Schwartz. I get the sense that Jim Schwartz would be perfect, right? He runs the wide nine. He's been an NFL head coach. He's got considerable clout. But guess what? I also get the feeling that he's a prick bastard, and the Shanahan probably doesn't like him. So it's like, do you hire your friends and have a comfortable room, or do you hire the best people and the best coaches and maybe have some uncomfort along the way? Steve Wilkes may have made them uncomfortable, but he was probably a better coordinator than Nick Sorensen. So, and he seemed like he had some answers. I get the sense that they don't have a lot of answers right now, and that's very concerning. So I would think competition. Competition is the name of the game. You want Jake coming back, fine, but you go find a couple other kickers that you really like, and kick it off in this summer, and at least have a competition. I don't know that you could do anything but that. I mean, I don't know. It's not like there's 20 options of things you can do. I think it's pretty much have a competition, bring in some new guys, or get ready for more of the same.
It's ironic. His nickname in college, you know what it was, right?
Money.
Yeah, Money Moody.
Yeah.
Guy didn't miss.
Well, it's still money, except now you got to bet against him.
Yeah.
Bill Kennedy says, would Robert Saleh consider coming back? That's an interesting one. All this talk about, Saleh, and Shanahan, maybe Shanahan's the kind of guy that after you coach with him for a while, you want to get away from him. I don't know. But Robert Saleh, rejoined the Packers, and his LaFleur and him were, I think, best men in each other's weddings. So there's a close relationship there. But I think if you're going to stay, if you're the Niners and you want to serve all these multiple masters, you want somebody you're comfortable with. You want somebody who's going to stay with the wide nine. You want somebody who's comfortable with your incumbent defensive coaching staff. I think Saleh checks all the boxes, and there may not be another guy who checks all the boxes. And if that's the case, you know what? It's a slam dunk, but you're going to have to probably give him some serious money to take this job. My guess is that he's not, this is the other thing too. These coaches are all really smart. They know where to go and where there's high expectations and low talent, where there's low talent but high expectations. Right now, the Niners are starting to become on defense kind of a low talent, high expectation defense, and that's the opposite of what they typically look for. Most of these guys want to go somewhere where there's no, the last coach was a disaster, and there's still really good talent there, which is why Harbaugh came here after Singletary, and why Harbaugh probably went to San Diego or went to LA because of how bad they were there last year.
And we got Staley.
Yeah, the Niners picked up Staley. Fuji Simeon says, thoughts on Moody missing a kick, thoughts on Garendo injury. If his injury is severe, MCL, ACL, does that mean number 44 Juice is back next year? I I know there are people that have explained the Juice contract to me that there's not a big benefit in cutting him loose. So maybe for that reason, Juice is back. But I think if you're going to try to upgrade your team on offense, I think you're going to have to upgrade the fullback spot because, I think Trent's coming back. I think Ayuk's coming back. CMC's coming back. Purdy's coming back. Kittle's coming back. Debo, I believe, is coming back. You know what I mean? All these guys are coming back. So if you're going to have any change, I think your change is going to come from what other tight ends you bring in or if you can change out your fullback.
I think they need to make some serious change, Larry, when it comes to the outside, not just the players, but the coaching staff, as you mentioned, because think about it. All these guys were in the room pretty much for the Super Bowl loss, right? Except Staley. So you keep Sorensen, he runs the defense. Everybody else the same. It's right now, it's not a very good feeling in that room. And you need some new blood sometimes to come in and shake things up, have a different voice. Shanahan should hire an offensive coordinator, in my opinion, that had success. And he can still run the offense. But why wouldn't you want somebody else to give you, he had McDaniel. McDaniel used to help in the offense. Why wouldn't you have somebody help you? Who's helping him right now?
I mean, he has offensive coaches. Forster is one of them. He's got one of the Kubiak sons there as well. But I kind of agree. I mean, if you're gonna challenge yourself, if you're gonna get better, you're gonna have to get some better coaches in the room, maybe, and some better players. Thomas Messina says, "Bring back Jim Tomsula. He has 2 rings in the EFL."
Let's do it.
There you go. Jalen LeGrant, Lynch and scouting are holding this team back. Needs to get a real GM to hold people accountable and set a standard that this isn't good enough. John, I think, does a lot of roles really well with this team, but what they really need is the director of college scouting. They need somebody who is like literally you could walk up to him on October the 9th and say, Ole Miss's backup long snapper. And he's like, he spits out a name and knows everything about him. I mean, you need a guy who's just immersed in college scouting. And that's what I would want. I'd want somebody who's the director of college scouting and doing it at a very high level.
Remember Tony Rosano of the 49ers was that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the job. I mean, you have to build through the draft. So if you want to kick ass in the draft, you're going to have to get guys who are draft specialists. Draft specialists are guys who are director of college scouting. Jesse Wade says, would you pay Saleh the bag to come back? Would you pay Tyreek to come over? Tyreek said today he's out of Miami. What are you doing with the 11th pick? I mean, I think Tyreek is exactly the type of weapon that they need. Now, I don't think they can afford him. He's getting older, and I don't know if they can afford him. As far as what am I doing with the 11th pick? I'm trading back, as Danny said. I think I'm trading back from 11 to 15. I'm trading back from 15 to 18. I'm trading back from 18 to 22. I'm trading back from 22 to 26. And then I'm sitting right there in the back half of the first round, and I'm going to draft somebody, but with like 7 additional draft choices for having moved down. I think that's the way to do it.
If you're signing Brock Purdy, you got to look at this as, not like I hate when people say like
volume
Super Bowl window, but like you're extending your period of where you want to like draft for. Like you want to have a future. This isn't the Warriors with Steph Curry. It's not a go right now. And I feel like Tyreek Hill is a little bit of a like, let's win next year. When you gotta let's try to win next year, but let's try to win next year and the next 5 years, continuing on each year. Like let's get players
that's
that are good.
Jimmy Butler move.
Yeah, like
kind of short end.
Yeah, like, let's not get short-sighted and sell out because we have Debo Samuel on the roster. Like I don't care that Debo Samuel may only be good for 1 more year. I want to be good for the next 5 years. I want to be good each year and be getting better. I want to get younger players, not get older for next year.
Yeah. So they need their trade back bonanza. They need a 15-player draft where they hit on 13 players and get 10 starters. If they have that kind of draft, they're going to look up in 2 years and they're going to be in the Super Bowl again. James Mockestad says, how many failed first-round picks were Kyle trumping John and the scouts? Is there any evidence that John would be overly insulted? Where is that coming from? Well, I just think that, he left the booth to run his own show personnel-wise. And, if all of a sudden he's the team president, it could be a very well-paying job, but it might not be the same challenge that he wants. I mean, John's on the Niners are one of the better rosters in pro football, even this year, but the misses have added up, and it's cost them. And as I said, they really can't afford to hit at the level they're hitting at right now. If they're gonna, I mean, that's the thing. If they're gonna run with LA and Kansas City and Detroit and Green Bay and Philadelphia, they're just gonna have to hit at a higher rate than they're hitting at right now. Simple as that. RJ says, is Jed making decisions based on the Harbaugh-Balky debacle? Has Jed's decision-making become impaired? No, I think Jed is at this point staying out of the way. He is staying out of the way. Jalen LeGrant says, trenches and playmakers, draft goal, cornerbacks in free agency, and a kicker.
Free agency, and yeah.
I would say I think you can do the wide receiver in free agency. I think the draft is where I'd want to get my defense, my offensive line, maybe my running backs. I like this draft. We'll get a whole lot into it as we get closer. Space Cowboy says, rebuild the O-line. Watching Aaron Donald, the Eagles D-line, and Chris Jones knock out the 49ers end of the game and out of the playoffs sucks. Rebuild the D-line. Those guys are knocked back 5 yards against the run. No pass rush. Yeah, the D-line has regressed significantly. Space Cowboy, Solid and D'Amico Ryans were first-year DCs, but they had the personality and moxie to be good. Sorensen seems so passive. If you go back to Saleh, there was that first year where we were like, get rid of Saleh. Saleh only became loved after the Niners got Nick Bosa. So the reality is that Saleh was on his way out until the personnel improved, and
half of the job is personnel. Half of the job is personnel. We were talking about Wink Martindale earlier in the show.
Yeah,
I think he's a good coach. He was the coach of the New York Giants before he went to Michigan, right?
Yes.
Right. New York Giants defense was dog shit. That's why he left. But he's still a good coach.
He's a good coach.
So that's half the game.
You got to have it's pro sports. You got to have the players. And Sorensen could do a better job with better players. There's no question about it. But I also don't like the fact that what adjustments did he make? They lined up in this wide 9. They rarely, if ever, brought the blitz. I think they blitzed like less than 12% of the time. He didn't seem like he had answers. When there were tough questions that was asked of him in the second half of the year, all he consistently seemed to center on was communication breakdown. Well, I mean, everything is a communication breakdown. I mean, part of coaching is that you don't have communication breakdowns. L. Kurtz says trade Bosa for 2 firsts and a player. I mean, there's that idea if you want to trade one of your best players. Space Cowboy says, good point regarding the Lions. Check out the Rams with limited picks. Byron Young, Kyron Williams, Kobe Turner, Puka Nacua, Jared Verse, Jalen Fisk, Kinchins, Bo Limmer. Yeah, no, there's no question. Les Snead is a hell of a personnel guy. There's no question about that. L. Kurtz says Tyreek Hill wants out from the Dolphins. Trade? I don't know what you'd have to give. But I'll say this: there aren't too many veterans that I'd be interested in trading for. He'd be one of them. He definitely would be one of them. Bill M says the good news is Moody will be back next year and he'll have competition for sure. Don't forget he's being paid $1.2 million next year, whether he's here or not. Oh, great! That's all I wanted to hear. Jake Moody says I'm the next Justin Tucker. Thank you, Jake. Fuji Simeon, I prefer cutting Moody, but Kev is a better man than me. If Moody is back at camp, he must be told. You're off the team. It's up to you to perform to get a spot. In other words, you're off. You're coming to camp off the team. You have to shoot. You have to make it somehow.
I mean, there was a lot of reports in spring ball and in training camp where it's like Moody just nailed a 50-yarder during the special teams period or what. I was like, oh man,
Stop. That and Purdy threw 3 pick sixes today, which basically just means he threw 3 tip ball interceptions and the guy ran 5 yards. John Kalua says 49ers need to spend this offseason fixing the bad culture they created this season. Win the draft. Should not expect much from Ayuk, CMC, and Trent. Trent shook my hand when he left the locker room the other day, and that's the first time he's ever done that. And I don't know. I'm not saying that Trent's going to retire, but if Trent opted to retire, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, would not be shocked. The way he said goodbye to us the other day, it was almost like we may not see each other again.
Detroit Vikings update. Jake Bates.
Yep.
The UFL kicker just hit a 48-yarder going into half.
Yeah. Detroit marched it down with
what do you know?
Less than a minute left, got into field goal position, just like the Niners did a week ago, and Jake Moody missed.
It's shocking that the Lions didn't have to draft a kicker in the 3rd round to get someone who could hit a 48-yarder.
It is amazing, too, by the way, that the Lions defense, which last week looked terrible, this week is totally bottling up the Vikings.
This is a defensive struggle tonight, 10-7. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
I give credit to Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, he was a good coach. Good man, too. Smack Jones _919 says Debo must go. Addition by subtraction. Mossy can walk, Love, Demo, and Green. Juice must go. Resign Dre. Try to make men's with JP Mason. Draft the best offensive tackle and load up on defense. Sign a free agent tight end, wide receiver. Bring in Mac Jones, and we are good. Look at that. Smack Jones has got it all mapped out. That is going to do it for us. We're closing in on 2 hours here, and I'm going to go watch the second half of Detroit and Minnesota.
Hey,
thanks.
Larry.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Minnesota and the second half, you want to real quick do a playoff prediction, what we think will happen in both conferences?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. Because AFC, you got Buffalo is home to Denver. And then
are all the matchups set? Do we have all the matchups?
Yeah, they're all set except for the NFC. We know who the loser tonight plays the Rams. So everything's set. So it's
Chargers. So I have the schedule for next week. It's Chargers, Texans, Steelers, Ravens on Saturday. It's Broncos, Bills, Packers, Eagles on Sunday, and Commanders, Bucks, and then it's to be determined against the Rams on Monday. That's going to be the Vikings, right?
Whoever loses tonight's got to go to LA.
Yeah, so that's probably going to be the Vikings. So I would say Chargers beat Texans in Houston.
I agree.
Ravens beat Steelers in Baltimore.
I agree.
Bills beat Broncos in Buffalo.
And I agree.
Eagles beat Packers in Philly. Commanders beat Buccaneers in Tampa. And Vikings beat Rams in LA.
Okay. I'm going to take Green Bay to upset Philly.
It's not bad. They haven't been able to. There's a weird vibe around the Packers, though. I don't know if you've seen any of the. Well, also, Danny, I don't know if you saw this, but there's injuries here.
Oh, if Love doesn't, if Love's not 100%, I'll
it's a weird Philly. Schedule. Why are the Commanders Buccaneers the primetime Sunday game? Seems like kind of a.
The Packers,
game.
By the way.
Really.
Today, Christian Watson was carted off with a right knee injury, so I would imagine he's out.
Jeez.
And Jordan Love has a right elbow injury.
Right elbow.
And they have Jordan Love come back in the game? Did he come back in the game? Because I saw he was warming up on the sideline with a minute left. Do we know?
I don't know if he came back or not. But
I
just get the feeling that the Packers. There's something wrong about the Packers' chemistry right now. Did you see the head coach yelling and screaming at Rich Bisaccia, the special teams coach? I don't know. I mean, it's just there's a weird vibe around LaFleur. They're 0 for this year against Detroit, Minnesota, and Philly.
I've changed my mind. I'll take Philly too. I didn't realize Love had an elbow
injury last week.
The one that I thought you were going to say you were going to disagree with, I thought you were going to go with Baker over the Commanders, and a lot of people will
on
because
that one,
Baker's playing well.
That's gonna be a really good game because it's kind of like two teams that we are not like, oh wow, these are juggernauts. Just can't wait to see. But it's an interesting game because they're kind of evenly matched, I think.
I think the game that's going to be really interesting is the Steelers-Ravens game because the Steelers play Lamar really well.
Ooh,
And
they could upset him
and
too.
Lamar does not play well in the playoffs. This is
Yeah.
almost a nightmare matchup.
Well,
for
and
the
also
Ravens.
Zay Flowers is hurt now.
Right. He has a knee sprain or something or a knee.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Wow.
That's a big one. All right, that is going to do it for us. But I always like to let's give our game balls and then we'll call it a night. Frank, we'll start with you. Who gets the game ball, good, bad, or otherwise?
Running back, 96 yards. Was it
Taylor?
Patrick
Taylor Jr. Oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I thought he ran hard, and he had to open some eyes not only from the running back coach, Coach Bobby Turner, right?
Yep.
But also I think Shanahan and maybe the NFL at large is saying, okay, who is this guy? Maybe we can use him. So I want to credit him for taking the opportunity that was presented to him and actually doing something with it. So he did good.
17 for 109, 6'4"
Yeah.
carry for Patrick Taylor. He's a great dude too. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Danny, who gets your game ball?
I'm going to give it to the hometown kid. His dad's a firefighter for the city of Phoenix. Ricky Pearsall, last game of the season after his horrible summer with getting shot, gets a touchdown in front of his hometown, his family and friends, 6 receptions. I think he had how many yards? Like 70 or something
69,
like that?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, Ricky Pearsall, he's coming on. Good for him.
Kev?
I'm going to give mine to Renardo Green. I thought I saw a number of good plays from Renardo. He's a young player. This is kind of what he was kind of known as being a feisty, handsy corner. And I thought he played with his hands really well. He may not be, he might not have the perfect technique, but he definitely gets it done. He had 3 tackles today and 3 pass deflections. And a rising star in the secondary. I love Renardo Green today.
I'm going to go with Juwan Jennings.
Yeah.
Juwan Jennings. I mean, my God.
Why'd they throw him out?
This guy is just an awesome player. Late second quarter, Jennings blocks who was it into the bench? And then the next play, he blocks Murphy Bunting and into the bench. And it was like Jennings shows up to fight, and he's willing to fight, and he's just got incredible toughness about him. And I don't understand why he was ejected. It's like, and I don't understand why the first guy that fought with Jennings totally, lucked out. Oh, it was Starling
his
Thomas.
helmet off.
It was Jennings against Starling Thomas. Okay, so Starling Thomas and Jennings fight. Starling Thomas rips his helmet off. They get offsetting penalties. On the next play or 2 plays later, Jennings gets into it with Sean Murphy Bunting, and Murphy Bunting, was grabbing at the face mask, but Murphy Bunting ejected, Jennings ejected, but Starling Thomas, no ejection at all. It's like, I don't understand the rules and how that works, but to me, just the fact that Juwan Jennings, it's week 18. Do you have to wonder how much that guy cares? The Niners need more Dre Greenlaw. They need more Juwan Jennings. If I were the personnel guy, I would literally have a meeting with all my scouts and just say, guys, I want these kinds of dogs. I want these kinds of guys. I want the guys who will play if there was no money. I want guys who are going to play if there's nothing on the line. I want guys who are tough and physical and violent and love to play, love contact, and are all about, they show up not for the paycheck but for the W. I always feel like when I'm watching Juwan Jennings and Dre Greenlaw that I'm watching kind of like the NFL version of Draymond Green. It's like these guys all want to play. They all want to fight. And that's what the thing is. It's a gigantic fight. So I'll take Juwan Jennings, man. If I could clone Juwan Jennings, I would. If I could make every guy on the team, like if I had 53 guys that were wired like Juwan Jennings, the Niners would be a Super Bowl champion. There's no doubt in my mind. So I love the fact that Jennings was dominating this game before he went out. Him and Dobbs were amazing together. Jennings, I think, was targeted, 12. He was targeted 10 times. He caught 7 balls for 52 yards. And he he'll fight you. And that to me is, I want guys on my team that will fight. And he is absolutely in that. That's the way he's cut. So Juwan Jennings is gets my player of the game in my game ball.
One more game ball we forgot to give. We need to give the umpire today. Was it the field judge? Whoever had to leave the game got carted off. The dude got. What are you doing? Getting involved in a little tussle? Let the guys go. They got They're fully padded. They got helmets on, and this guy tries to break up the fight and gets hurt. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Everybody, I want you guys to give these guys a follow. Frank's got the In the Dungeon show, just how it's spelled right there in red under his head. In the Dungeon, ENTHA Dungeon show. Frank, you going tonight? Later on tonight?
Yeah, I'm going at 9:00. So everybody listening, if you want to hear some more football coverage, we'll also touch on basketball, some movie reviews, some things of that nature. Give us a chance. Check us out.
Sounds good. And Danny, I know you've been grinding, doing a bunch of stuff. I know you were talking hoops last night. I'm catching a lot of your live streams. When do you go live next, Danny?
We're supposed to go tonight. Looks like the Warriors are getting thrashed, but we'll be on probably right after the football game because I want to watch this. If it's a close game, I want to watch it till the end. So probably go on for 30, 40 minutes after the football game tonight. So probably about 8:15, 8:20.
I'm back tomorrow at 9 a.m. with Damon Bruce doing our wake up brought to you by Sam's Chowderhouse. That's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Better for sponsoring this live stream. Thanks to Danny. Thanks to Red. Thanks to Kev. Thanks to all of you guys in the chat. And thanks, guys, for just an amazing season. I mean, I realized last year was a lot more fun than this year. We were in Vegas. We went to the Super Bowl. It was a whole lot more enjoyable to talk about, and I'm sure our shows were a lot more enjoyable to watch. But thank you to everybody for supporting the channel. We're at 53,000 subs. We're going to keep it rolling throughout the off season. We'll do a lot of baseball this year. We'll do some basketball. We'll do a lot of NFL draft. We're going to spring training in the month of March. So a lot of good things on the horizon, new sponsors, new everything coming with the show. So thanks to everybody who's helped make the Krug Show what it is. Seriously, without you guys, we're sitting here talking to ourselves. And that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks to everybody who jumped in, and have a great night. If you just tuned in, Cardinals beat the Niners 47-24. Danny, you have a final thought you want to?
I'll just say it's great being on. It's like you said, a little disappointing to the end of the season, 18 weeks, but it's fun. And now we move on to the playoffs, but without us. But we'll be back. We'll be back.
There you go. For Danny, for Kev, for Red, have a great night. I'm Larry. Appreciate every single one of you. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man